there is a letter from the Trump campaign to the Harris campaign saying that the Harris campaign extorted the presidency from Joe Biden, and there looks to be a stand-in. There looks to be somebody else playing the role of Joe Biden who is taller than the real Joe Biden, and I'll show you that. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start off with this unbelievable Olympic ceremony that kicked off the Olympics yesterday. Have you read Behold a Dark Horse, or Behold a Dark Horse, I think, or a Pale Horse, Behold a Pale Horse? And it is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and the first horse is death, right? And the first horse and the rider is death. And so interesting parallels here, right at the Paris Summer Olympics. We've got a pale horse and a horseman riding the pale horse, and it seems very, very anti-lockdown. Says, what does this have to do with sport? It's a dark Olympics. Yes, very, very concerning. Libs of TikTok says the Olympics is basically turned into one long drag show. The Olympics has gone completely woke. I think it's actually worse than that. Worse than that. Yeah, it is. And well, we'll look at this. Here is the opening of the, I think this is the opening of the opening ceremony. Hold on a second. There's a part, I have the clip of them taking off the lid of the, here it is. This one should have been there. Well, this is a teaser, and then we'll get to the lid being taken off. But this blue guy is their imagined perfect human who was grown from a non-human stock, right? Just grown from whatever, from science, from their creatorness, or whatever it is. They're trying to replace the way humans currently reproduce with a post-national way, or a satanic way, or whatever you want to call it. And Libs of TikTok says, this is the actual opening ceremony of the Olympics. This isn't parody. You know, well, we should watch this one, because this gives a more fulsome view of what's actually going on here. Here we go. Okay, just in case you're only listening, there's a blue Smurf guy who was on a dinner plate, and the dinner plate had like a one of those presentation domes over it, and then the dome was lifted off, and the blue guy started singing, and behind the blue guy is the weird Last Supper with the very large woman in the middle. I don't know what she's wearing on her head. It's supposed to be kind of a crown, I guess. And these are trans and LGBT whatever representatives in the background. Does this represent France, do you think? Here, I'll continue on, because he gets up and gets like super enthusiastic. It's terrible. Like, I'm uncomfortable watching this. We're just going to fast forward until he stands up and he starts singing, and then he passes off to dancing people. This is just creepy as all get out. It's creepy. Hold on. And then he goes over here. We have to fast forward. Then he passes off to these people. So what's with the blue guy? Okay, we have to find out what's with the blue guy. Here's this guy explaining what is with the blue guy. He represents the short version. I'm going to let him explain it, but the short version is he represents their ideal. I already explained it. He represents this amalgamation of their brilliance over God, right? Their showmanship of this created being. That's the whole idea. This guy ties it off much better than I am. Here we go.
I'm about to blow y'all's mind. Dinner and a show. This is as satanic and sadistic as it gets. You can see them lift the lid off of a dinner plate and then exposing a blue man. This blue man is a representation of a Smurf. A Smurf is a child that unalived. That is why they're blue. The 2024 Paris Olympics are an absolute fucking disgrace. This is going to be overlooked by everybody, but I will tell you what this represents. I just want to say, first off, no, I don't care what you identify as. That makes no difference in the matter to me. And we're just going to overlook the sacrilegious recreation of the Last Supper. But back to the blue man. When I first saw this blue man, I was like, oh, that's weird. But it stuck with me, and I was like, what does this remind me of? Have you guys ever looked into the Smurf lore? Well, he is a representation of the Smurfs. Quick spark notes on Smurf lore. So fake creatures lure children into snowstorms where they unalive, and then mushrooms grow from these unalived bodies, and those mushrooms are where the Smurf people live. So as I was diving into this to just, refresh my mind on the Smurf lore, I found this, and now everything makes sense about this blue man.
The whole thing is, it's based on this, the homunculus, the idea that you can create a human life form without a mother or a father. So
Really? That's what the Smurfs are based on?
So Big Blue here is a representation of a homunculus Smurf. No, boys can have babies. Yep. You know who else was a homunculus? Baphomet. You needed any more confirmation? We got Snoop D-O-double-G walking the torch, rocking the ox chain. What do you think that chain is representing? This shit's just all up in our face. They're mocking us. It's disgusting. I will never watch the Olympics ever again. If everyone can do me a favor, like...
Okay, so the Smurf thing is a little tangential to the real point, right? But for the symbology of the whole thing, I think that kind of falls all in line. And the whole idea of this singular being, children being created, raised by the state, and you're not male or female, you're either, just like that God that guy was referencing, right? This guy. So Baphomet or whatever his name is, I can't remember. It's all part of the same ideology, right? And there's more clips from this whole opening ceremony, but DD Politics says, did the IOC think they were going to get away with this Last Supper parody thing? And there's worse, like there's far worse. This bearded drag queen thing is highlighted as well. Here's a priest talking about how this whole thing is very, very satanic, and the takeoff of the Last Supper is quite egregious. Brian Lilly says Catholic Bishop Robert Barron on the obscene mockery of Christianity during the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics. Well said. And so, we'll listen to some of this here. It's a little long-winded, and we're gonna have a long show. So, buckle in. Here we go.
This is Bishop Barron. Just a few days ago, I was in Indianapolis for the marvelous celebration of the Eucharistic Congress. 50,000 Catholics coming together to worship the Lord and celebrate the real presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. So I come from that experience, and I come home, and I love the Olympics, so I turn on the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. What do I see now? And it's in Paris, France, a city I love. I spent 3 years as a doctoral student there. What do I see but this gross mockery of the Last Supper? And I won't describe it any further. Just go online. It's gone viral. You can see it. But France felt evidently, as it's trying to put its best cultural foot forward, the right thing to do is to mock this very central moment in Christianity where Jesus, at his Last Supper, gives his body and blood in anticipation of the cross. And so it's presented, though, as this gross, sort of flippant mockery. France, which used to be called the eldest daughter of the church, Paris, that gave us, Thomas Aquinas taught there, and Vincent de Paul was there, King Louis IX, St. Louis, France that sent Catholic missionaries all over the world. France, whose culture, and I mean the honoring of the individual and of human rights and of freedom, is grounded very much in Christianity, felt the right thing to do was to mock the Christian faith. A question I would pose, we all know the answer to it. Would they ever have dared mock Islam in a similar way? Would they ever have dreamed of mocking in this gross, public way, a scene from the Quran? As I say, we all know the answer to that. I think, folks, what's interesting here is this deeply secularist, postmodern society knows who its enemy is. They're naming it, and we should believe them. They're telling us who they are. We should believe them. But furthermore, we Christians, we Catholics should not be sheepish. We should resist. We should make our voices heard.
Yes. And I mean, further than that, we should demand better from our leadership. Here is concerned citizen. He says, your technocratic communist NWO future. So, of course, the Paris Olympics are happening. There was a bomb threat on the tube or on the subway before this whole thing, and they're using that as justification to crack down. I've heard it's worse than this, but I haven't had any kind of proof that it's worse than this. And I looked up Paris lockdowns, Paris crackdowns, hardening of Paris, Paris hardening, all that kind of stuff. Things are busy, right? I've been busy the last couple of days. So my car broke down yesterday, believe it or not. On the way home, I was like, oh my gosh, seriously? And before we left, I said, because I was going to try and sneak a video in, because if I got home early enough, I could kind of get one in the afternoon. But regardless, that didn't happen because I was waiting for a tow truck. But I said before we left, do you think we should take this one? Because it's been throwing errors, and I don't know if it's like the errors are wrong or if there's actually a problem. And there hadn't been an error for 5 days or something like that. It had been fine. And so we decided now to be fine. And we went, and then coming down the mountain, boop, check engine light comes on. Actually, the check battery light came on, and then something started flashing. And then we looked it up and we were like, oh, this could be a problem. And we didn't quite make it home. Very close though, very close. But that's why I didn't have time. So there's all sorts of, anyway, back to this, right? There's all sorts of news reports about Paris being transformed into a city of metal. Well, this is actually a news report that I found. Paris transformed into a city of metal and QR codes as security ramps up for the Olympics. So justification, the Olympics, of course you understand that, citizen. It's for your safety, comrade, and you go along with the QR codes because you don't want to make a fuss. You don't want to say, well, hold on, our freedom is more important than, the security for the Olympics, right? Hold on a second here. And people will then argue with you. Are you kidding me, right? Think people could die, right? Barricades and restricted zones set up as city center experiences militarization not seen since the Second World War. Oh, and COVID. We won't mention COVID though. Let's talk about Jasper. We have to talk about Jasper. Jasper is a big, big deal. So the Olympics are dead to me, and I'm not going to cover the Olympics. I've got one other Olympic story, but it's more tangential, and it has to do with holding the Canadian government accountable less than we hold soccer coaches accountable. So we'll get there. But I'm not going to cover the Olympics. I don't care what happens at the Olympics. Unless there's a big event, there's going to be a big event. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I hope we get to the end of the Olympics and the big event was just the fact that the communists have taken over the Olympics. Because, that's a big event too, right? We should absolutely not let that pass by without comment, because the communists are in charge of the world governments. The communists are creating censorship laws to criminalize anybody who speaks out against them. And now they're in charge of the Olympics. All of the institutions of the world, looks like the judiciary of the world, they're all being paid off. We're on this track. And again, if you haven't read this book, if you haven't read the Committee of 300 to understand why we're on this track and how much motivation is behind it. Motivation is money. Okay. All of the printed money that's being printed is going towards this goal, because in the post national future, they can give you money and then have it expire. So they don't care about anything other than getting over their goal line. And they're going to burn it all down in order to get over their goal line. And unless we stop them, honestly. Anyway, so Olympics, terrible. Communists taking over everything. I'm not going to cover sports. I'm not going to cover any of that kind of stuff. I'll cover the politics of it, and if there's a big event, but the Olympics are being used to manipulate the public in a way that is counter to the direction our society should be going, right? And our society should be going towards freedom, more security, no taxes on energy, no taxes on food, holding elected officials accountable, including jail time if they screwed up, including holding them financially accountable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a direction we should go and a direction we shouldn't, and we're going in the wrong direction. And the Olympics is the epitome of all that. So F the Olympics. Let's talk about fires. Jasper. Paul says, why were warnings about the fire risks in Jasper National Park ignored for years by Ottawa? By 2017, 93,000 hectares there were ravaged by pine beetles with dead trees everywhere. By 2018, the fire risk was obvious. The more all of this happens, the more I'm convinced. I was in Newfoundland not too long ago, and I was looking around and I thought, what's the purpose of all these dead trees and why are they leaving them in there? Because if you drive along, like anywhere in Canada, you see large swaths of trees, just trees for as far as the eye can see. And in Newfoundland, you can see dead trees kind of dispersed along the alive trees. And I thought to myself, that's a tinderbox. Once any of those dead trees go up, that whole forest area is going up. It's so close together and blah, blah, blah. The reason all of this is happening, the reason there's no forestry management, is because they're trying to say this is climate change, and it's not climate change. It's absolutely not climate change. It is inaction by the people who should be acting and should have been acting years ago, almost 10 years ago. So it's absolutely egregious that they haven't, and they're going to blame climate change, and they're going to do that because we're emotional goldfish and we don't remember anything. And if somebody says it's climate change, then 60% of people go, oh, climate change, right? And if 40%, and that's probably high, say it's not climate change, it's because people didn't do their damn jobs. They say that's very alt-right of you, and you're not allowed to say anything. That's Islamophobic. That's anti-Semitic. Right? That's illegal to say. You can't say that. They're trying to get it there. Okay? They're trying to get it to the point where you're not even allowed to say, hey, if you're fat, the whole reason you're fat is because you're eating too much. It has nothing to do with your thyroid. That's illegal? I can't say that? Okay, because thyroid is a medicalized problem, right? And they can treat that, and it costs money for you and for the whole system, et cetera, but eating less, nobody makes money on that. Okay, moving on. John says July 16, 2018. Here's a quote from a newspaper article. The people in Jasper aren't saying that they're wondering if the town's going to burn down. It's when the town is going to burn down, said Jasper resident David Miller. 98% of the pine trees in Jasper were infested by pine beetles and dead by 2019. They knew. Ryan says, once the fires subside, our government will use this tragedy as an opportunity to push their climate agenda. They won't buy more water bombers, they won't hire more firefighters, and they won't manage the forests. They'll just keep blaming CO2 and us. And it's faulty and it's wrong. It's wrong. They're lying. David says, Jasper and climate change. Eric, the liberal MP from Windsor, saw the Jasper fire. He and others are tweeting to make sure everyone knows how much they believe in climate change. He quotes Joe Biden, says, heartbreak for Albertans, then adds ominously, but let's also be real with each other. This is the world that climate change denying conservatism will leave our children. I mean, never let an opportunity like that go to waste. You can make political hay out of this disaster, right? They can't seem to help themselves. Back to the Post. I wanted to ignore, but Eric is an MP, not just another keyboard climate activist. So if he cares about climate change and fires, here's how he can hold the government accountable. 1, Jasper is a federal park. Parks Canada has its own fire service. It is totally responsible for all wildfire prep, operations, and management to protect the park and the town. The locals have been deeply concerned about dead trees, stands, and the lax leave it to nature green thinking in the Parks Canada bureaucracy, a notoriously slow, political, unresponsive maze that struggles to manage core functions from its HQ far away from the largest mountain parks in Gatineau, Quebec. Thousands of tweet exchanges as recent as last month highlight local concerns over Jasper as a tinderbox managed by scaloric bureaucracy at parks for 7 years. Forests management isn't political, it's engineering. Albertans want competence that protects lives and homes and parks with better infrastructure and planning and processes from a bureaucracy that gets things done. Politics are secondary. As a result, Eric and people like him believe climate facilitates forest fires should use the MP's status and conviction to demand answers from Parks Canada CEO Ron Hellman and Stephen Guilbeault ASAP. Why were there vast tracts of dead and desecrated tree stands in Jasper that the locals have demanded action on since 2017? This was noted by academics, environmentalists, and everyone working in and around Jasper for years. What was done were global best practices followed on controlled cuts, controlled burns, well-tended fire access roads, funding operations, and mitigation priorities to protect the town. I can tell you that none of that happened. How well equipped and prepared was the fire suppression team at Canada's second most visited national park? What steps were taken to protect the Jasper town site specifically? Parks Canada needs to release all departmental notes and emails on the fire plan for Jasper the past 7 years since the pine beetle dead tree crisis, because climate change didn't leave acres of dead trees next to a beautiful mountain town for 7 years. The government did. Climate change is not a matter of belief or denial. It's nature. It's systemic. Tweeting about it publicly when a disaster is underway may feel good, but what you do about it is the only thing that matters. The Toronto flood was going to happen. Like Eric, the mayor talked about climate change, but she failed to plan for flooding infrastructure and updated processes. This drove up costs and damage. The mayor has no power over nature. She controls city planning. Her opinion on climate is irrelevant. Her job was to mitigate risk. The Jasper fire was going to happen. The parks have all routine fires, and it's part of nature. What isn't supposed to happen is that we lose a mountain town a federal bureaucracy is tasked to protect. The cost of a politically correct bureaucracy failure are too high. You can't just say climate. There has to be accountability. Jasper is a stunning, almost magical place. I played and hiked there. I loved it as a kid and took a long break there next to the lake with friends as an adult. It's one of those rare places you can stare into the stars at night with skies that go on forever. Watching it burn is terrible. I'm especially heartbroken for friends and other Jasper residents who lost so much more than just a beautiful park this week. Canada can do better than this. Yeah, except that communists run our government and they're not interested in preserving Canada. In fact, they want to burn it down. Really. Have you heard that song, Burn It Down? This is all social engineering. Like, there's no country. I heard the guy talking about how he came up with the idea for the country song, Burn It Down. And he said, I was just sitting around with some friends and the chorus just came out of nowhere. And I thought to myself, you're bullshitting. And somebody handed you those lyrics and said, you're going to be famous, son. And that's it. That's the end of the story. And like, he's being used and this whole song's being pushed. There's all sorts of songs that just get pushed, like songs that aren't really good enough to be a number one, but they need a new number one because they can't just leave Luke Combs on number one for the whole year. And they want to give, what's her name, Lainey, whatever, the Artist of the Year award. So they have to replace it often. The same thing happens in regular mainstream music. I listened to the top 10 Billboard music, like whatever, the other day, and they're all garbage. Absolute nonsense. I don't know how anybody can listen to it. It's not music. And they're all pushing ideological whatever. But anyway, back to the country music stuff that I was talking about. They'll take a song off and it's like medium good, I guess. It's good enough. It's fine. It musically works, but I'm not singing it in my head until they drive it into my brain because they put it on replay all the time. Like every time you turn on the radio, every time you change the channel, it's that song again. And it's like, what the heck? There's a song called 5'9", right? Same thing. It wasn't good enough to be a number one, but they made it a number one because they just played it and forced people to quote unquote like it. And they were like, oh, it's number one, and it stayed number one for like a week and then it was gone. And just forgettable. Anyway, they do this all the time, all sorts of stuff. And it's done to convince the public of a specific whatever, right? Whatever it is. Natasha Montreal is talking about Jasper again, back to the fire. And she says, for 7 years, mayors, locals, area CPCMP researchers have begged Parks Canada to safeguard Jasper against the imminent threat of wildfire. We're quite comfortable with where we are with our own emergency planning and evacuation planning, replied Parks Canada. This was from 2018. Jasper National Park not prepared for potential forest fire catastrophe, researchers say. We're quite comfortable, blah, blah, blah. So they're dismissing everything. Here is in the House. People were told in 2017 by the Conservative Party of Canada that, yeah, like, this is a problem. Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, Jasper National Park, one of Canada's major tourist destinations, has been devastated by the pine beetle infestation. Much of the forest is dead or dying. The dead trees are a tremendous fuel load and present a significant risk to the community of Jasper. Residents are concerned for their own safety and that of the visitors and the security of their homes. With a high risk of wildfires fueled by a forest devastated by the pine beetle, have the Liberals put a plan in place to protect this park?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is absolutely committed to the ecological integrity of our national parks. That is my first priority as the minister. We are working very hard in all of our parks, including Jasper National Park. I look forward to talking to the member further about this and seeing how we can move forward. Thank you.
Nonsense. And they didn't do anything. They didn't actually do anything. Tim says, sad day for Jasper. Unfortunately, this was inevitable. Fuel loads had been allowed to grow to ungodly levels in the park. I talked to a park ranger 15 years ago. He pointed out that aggressive firefighting is partially to blame. Every naturally occurring fire is immediately extinguished, which means if the forest is never thinned out of old growth and detritus. I asked why nothing is done about it. He explained that nobody wants to be the one to let wildfires burn or disturb pristine nature with heavy equipment to cut fire lines or remove old growth trees. So you're just going to let the risk grow until the town burns? He shrugged. Fair enough. He doesn't own the park. If he owned the park, he'd have protected his assets instead of shrugging. This is the problem with government and public ownership. Everyone in the system can just shrug. Well, it's not my responsibility. but it is though, right? Andy Lee is responding to petrified COVID parent. COVID parent says, I really hope nobody sees this Jasper forest management plan from 2022 approved by Minister Gelbo. If people learn that this fire was caused by government mismanagement, it could be put a real dent in the climate change narrative. And so Andy Lee is highlighting a couple of the things in that plan. And it says the Jasper Fire Management Plan 2007 is updated, including targets for fire restoration, wildfire management, and the reduction of wildfire risk for the Jasper town site and other valued assets within the park. Area burned through both prescribed fire and management wildfires, at least 20% of the long-term fire cycle, blah, 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 blah. It's a little technical, right? But she asks, was any of this done? No. Not really. And so not surprising, right? Lori Goldstein, not surprising that this fire happened, in my opinion. Lori Goldstein says, good read. Our politicians are now using climate change to mask years of government and bureaucratic failure to manage forests competently, including the disaster in Jasper. This cost of a politically correct bureaucratic failure are too high. You can't just say climate. So this is the David Knight thread that I read, or the David Knight tweet that I read talking about that already. Indie Media says Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, Forestry Minister Todd Lowen, and Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan looked on as Jasper Mayor Richard Ireland looks at the ruins of his family home of 67 years destroyed by wildfire. It's so weird to me. The thing that stands out are the houses, like his neighbor's house is just fine. The house across the street, just fine. Weird. How many other houses on the street were burned to a crisp, right? Like, Yaza, and this guy's got arson in here. And I responded saying, yeah, arson's terrible, right? Like, don't you think that they should have done some forestry management and et cetera, et cetera? There are people to blame for this, and it's not climate change, that's for sure. He was upset that I didn't see it the way he saw it. Here's Danielle Smith being very emotional. I don't know, this is helpful. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments. Here we go.
Jasper and those displaced far from home, looking at the images of your town on TV and online, the feelings of loss and fear and loneliness must be overwhelming. But you are not alone. All Albertans are with you. For many generations, the town of Jasper and the parks surrounding it have been a source of pride. With some of the most beautiful scenery in the entire, in the world. Our grandparents visited to experience the majesty of this place with its mountains and lakes and meadows. They took our parents, who then took us to this special spot that they'd spent time in as children. And now we take our own kids and our own loved ones and visitors from around the world to feel that same feeling that you get with your first glimpse of the mountains on the horizon. A feeling that even though you've just left home, you're coming home. And so although those of us who experience Jasper as visitors can't imagine what it feels like to be a Jasperite right now, we share the sense of loss with all of those who live in the town, who care for it, and who have helped build it. Jasper, we will continue to stand by you, and as everyone works to get their feet back under them, and as we look forward to recovery.
So that's Danielle Smith. It's very, like, she's emotional. It's frustrating that people have been begging for years to have this looked at, to have this dealt with. Smith herself put money into the firefighting budget, as far as I understand it, but people are saying that she took money out of it, so I don't know which is true. I'm inclined to believe that she increased it. I saw lots of articles talking about her increasing it, and the people saying that she cut it are citing... I didn't think citing things that were as valid as the ones being cited for her increasing the budget. And so, but take everything with a grain of salt, because who knows, right? That's very nitty gritty, wonky Alberta politics. So I could be wrong. Chrystia Freeland is importing South African firefighters because we don't like training firefighters here, and we like laundering money. So right now, Chrystia Freeland says, many brave South African firefighters are on their way to help put out the fires in Jasper. At the G20 today, I thanked South African's Enoch Gondwana for his country's support in our fight against this devastating wildfire season. Seems really strange. Why are we not investing in our own infrastructure, in our own people, et cetera, et cetera? And historically, Canada wasn't asking for help on the world stage for fighting domestic wildfires. So it's weird that all of a sudden we are. Very, very odd. And don't let this picture fool you. Justin Trudeau's working all the time. He's working all the time. Ryan Garrison says 25,000 people evacuated, areas of Jasper burned to ash, and our prime minister can't even hold a press conference to address it because he's too busy surfing. Once again, his hatred for Western Canada is on full display. Yep, for sure, right? So Justin Trudeau, too busy for dealing with Jasper. He does tweet about it. I've got a tweet of his later. Lee Humphrey is responding to Kirk. Kirk is saying, we've got $45 billion for batteries, and the battery plants are failing now already. Like, that's accelerated. That's way faster than I thought it was going to happen. Not even 2025, and the battery plants are like, yeah, this is not going to happen. Sorry. Ford's saying, no, we're not going to be actually doing any of those battery plants. We're going to build trucks, big, heavy-duty trucks. Ukraine, 12 billion. 12 billion, I think probably more than that. Arrive Can, 60 million. And water bombers, big fat zero. Unless you're talking about water bombers for Europe, in which case we've built them and they're going to be sent there soon. Diana Murphy says, he's the international king of virtue signaling. He's the international king of stupid. Kevin says, remember when 8 months ago Trudeau pledged to build water bombers in Canada to send to Europe, even though he was warned 7 years ago of the tinderbox waiting to explode in Jasper. And that's, I mean, we've ordered some water bombers, but they're going to Ukraine. So lucky us. Justin Trudeau tweets on the 25th. He says he spoke with Premier Smith, and we're deploying more resources to reinforce Alberta and Parks Canada response to wildfires in Jasper and across the province. I mean, the South African ones, right? Those resources. Our governments are working together to keep Albertans safe and supported through this. Yeah. Far too late, says Charter Sobeski. Shame on you. Yes. Far too late. Years too late. Courtney says, brutal, heartbreaking images coming out of Jasper. Here's a post with more visuals on what's been lost. So they're going through the all of the damaged areas, and there are places that are just fine. I've got another video for you as well. A lot of people are pointing out that there's a lot, like wildfires that leave trees intact are very strange. Very, very strange, but the houses are burned, the cars are burned. Any blue cars around? Anybody see any blue cars? But yeah, the trees are just fine. So is that normal? Is that, like, I genuinely asking a question, because there are people online that say on one side of things, if you've got a wildfire that's burning forests, you would have, the trees would probably catch fire. The shrubbery would probably catch fire, right? Is the shrubbery caught fire? There's a little bit of fire damaged shrubbery. So it's interesting. It's all very interesting to me. I have questions. I feel like the footage deserves examination, but we're not going to get it. We're going to get the next crisis 2 days hence. You know, like, we're in a washing machine, and this is going to last 10 seconds, right? Lahaina, do you remember Lahaina? Like, what happened to the children of Lahaina? 10 seconds and our attention is gone. Absolutely gone. True Grit Graham says Jasper at 9:30 this morning, July 25th, Thursday, raining hard with much of the town still intact. East of Hazel Ave neighborhoods are okay. Damage to the west of the town still unknown. Fire Hall, Petro Station East, Nestor's Casinos, Whistler Inn, okay. So there's a whole bunch of places that are okay. I don't know how neighborhoods look, et cetera, et cetera. This is a disaster, absolutely disaster. I'm just trying to give you a taste of it. But I think that we deserve better as Canadians. We deserve better from our leadership rather than shrugging and saying, I don't know, it's climate change that's to blame. Definitely not me. Nope. Sorry, bud. You were supposed to mitigate that. And if you didn't or refused to, that's definitely you. Harrison says, in 2023, a record of over 16 million hectares of land burned from wildfire in Canada, suppressing the previous record set in 1989. Since 1989, wildfires in Canada have been decreasing. This is a catastrophic failure in forest management, not climate change. Yep. They stopped doing their job, and they know they stopped doing their job, and they don't care, and that's it. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful